The attack on Pearl Harbor, as described by history.co.uk, took place on December 7th, 8 a.m. in 1941. This was led by Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo with a total aerial fleet of 353. The bombing lasted 2 hours, destroying 20 American naval vessels and 200 airplanes. The Japanese left 2,000 dead American soldiers and another 1,000 wounded. However, all of this was not enough to cripple the American forces, as Franklin D. Roosevelt declared war on Japan just 1 day after the attack. This shows that America had an even larger fleet of naval vessels, airplanes, and submarines waiting on standby. Despite the attack being a surprise, Japan and America had an inevitable conflict for decades prior. Japan knew that the only solution to its demographic and economic problems during the late 1930s was to invade neighboring territory, which Japan eventually declared war on China in 1937, according to history.co.uk. The goal of this was to take over their import market, but this would not be possible with the threat of the American bases close to the Pacific. America clearly had been prepared to go to war, despite constantly reminding nations of their dream of peace. Despite how heavily packed Pearl Harbor was with firepower, and according to history.co.uk, America had an even larger fleet closer to her mainland, which was used for World War II. The attack against America was to disable American threats in the Pacific, to open up freedom for Japan to invade neighboring territory. However, the outcome resulted in a disaster for Japan. Rather than taking the United States out of the picture, they ended up dragging them into the war, thus causing further complications and costs for Japan. For example, the devastating bomb of Tokyo killed 100,000 citizens, making 1 million homeless, according to online military education. However, 30 years later into the picture, this allowed Japan to become a model nation and a very prosperous country. This is looking at the argument from an outcome-based perspective. According to PearlHarbor.org, on August 1941, the United States of America had placed an embargo on Japan, prohibiting it from exports such as steel, scrap iron, and aviation fuel. This would have led Japan's air force to be crippled and useless. This embargo was not a direct threat to Japan, however, it implied that America had war in thought, as this was an indirect attack against the Japanese aviation fleet. As Japan realized the fate of the embargo, the only prosperous solution was to invade neighboring territory to expand their own land and re-enter the trade market. The U.S. bases in Pearl Harbor would threaten Japan's actions, as Japan feared America would retaliate against her actions. The intention of Japan was to temporarily cripple the U.S. Air Force to prevent them from attacking Japan first. This was considered a preemptive attack for Japan. Said by history.co.uk, This act was to scare off America from the Pacific, giving Japan the freedom it required to get back on its feet. Japan didn't want war. This surprise attack was to temporarily prevent America from interfering with Japan's ambitious actions in the Pacific. I am defending Japan by saying that had they not attacked, America would have attacked first and with even more firepower. It was evident that America was willing to attack. They were just waiting for Japan to make the first move. America knew that making the embargo would trigger Japanese aggression and light their motivation to bring Japan back to her feet and her rightful standpoint. Had Japan left America whilst they took action to their solution, America would have developed a stronger arsenal of firepower against Japan in World War II. To conclude, Japan was placed in a demographic and economic conflict, and to top their issues, the United States decided to place a crippling embargo that would only motivate their intentions to take over neighboring import markets. The attack on Pearl Harbor was preemptive, and it was to stall the development of American forces and hopefully disable threats against Japan in the Pacific. Japan was merely doing what was best for her nation, and on top of their positive intentions, America had retaliated with such devastating forces. Japan was doing what was right to benefit their nation, but America retaliated with revenge and what they wanted to do instead of what was best.